So our next guest here is John Giegengack. John, great to have you here.
Great, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Tell us, the audience, a little bit about yourself and your role, please.
Sure, so my name's John Giegengack. I'm the founder and the principal analyst at a company called Hub Entertainment Research in the US. We've been in business since 2013 and we do about 75,000 consumer surveys each year. Our goal is to tell our clients, who are all the major TV providers and streaming platforms and ad agencies, how today do people find and choose and consume entertainment content of all kinds, and why do they choose some providers over others?
Nice. And that's a focus mostly on US, or you do it globally?
Most of our subscription research is in the US, but we do a lot of work for individual clients all around Europe and around the world.
Okay. And it's your first time in Oslo, or at least the first time to Northern Waves?
It's my first time to Northern Waves and my first time in Oslo,
Wow.
so I'm very, very excited to be here.
How do you like it so far? We're 4 hours into the event.
It's great. I mean, I think it's really interesting to hear from such a variety of, because I think when it comes to entertainment, people are people, and the things that motivate you to want to watch TV or to play video games or whatever it is are very similar wherever you go. But one of the interesting things about Europe in comparison to the US is that in the US we have this really big problem with cord cutting, people that are leaving pay TV providers, not necessarily because it's too expensive, but because of how much of the money they're spending goes for stuff they don't even use. People on average use about 10% of the channels that they have access to. 2,000
channels and nothing on?
Exactly, yeah. And here you guys have a very robust public TV presence that lets people get access to lots of good content for free. Mm-hmm. It greatly reduces the extent to which people are being forced to pay for stuff they're not going to use. Mm-hmm. So that really kind of gives the trends, I think, a different trajectory, even if the motivations of the consumers themselves are very similar.
Okay. And you had just given a nice talk.
Yep.
What was the topic?
So I talked about what we see as kind of the 4 most important trends that are going to impact TV over the next year. We're in what I think of now as the second act of streaming. So the first act was the race of all of these other TV providers to try to catch up with Netflix, to build massive amounts of content in the hopes that they could take Netflix's crown away from them. That has not worked out. They're now facing the hangover of all that spending and going through a very rocky time. And they're now trying to figure out in the next act of streaming, what do we do to make our business viable and to turn a profit in an environment where we no longer have these really lucrative carriage fees from the cable companies to rely upon.
Okay. So if there's one single takeaway people should remember from your talk, what would that be?
I think the most important takeaway is how much viewers need this ecosystem to be simpler. So we heard in one of the earlier talks about piracy, that one of the big drivers of piracy is just that it's hard to find the show that I'm after, and those platforms often have everything in one place.
Yep.
So it's kind of ironic that the illegal platforms are the ones that make it easier to watch. You would think it would be the companies that are getting paid or that are producing this content in the first place that would make it easier for a user to find them. And we have found that it's become so complicated that the simplicity is a virtue, but now it's virtuous enough that people they're actually willing to spend money. For instance, for an app that lets them use and pay for all their streaming platforms in one place, even if that app comes with no content of its own, just the fact that it's making it easier to use all the other ones is something that they're willing to spend some money on.
Yeah, the problem was, and partly still is, that all these big SVOD players said, no, this is my content, it's my metadata.
Yep.
You don't get any access to that. Deep linking? No way.
Yeah.
But that's not in the interest of the consumer.
That's in the U.S. another big thing that's happening is that the whole cable TV industry is based, going back to the 90s, where every cable company has its own little fiefdom, its own monopoly, and so they didn't really care about good customer service because those people couldn't, even if they wanted to leave, there was nowhere that they could go, so they could treat them as badly as they wanted to. They kind of maintained that for far too long. Now all of these consumers do have options, and they're not just the product that's being sold to advertisers, they're the customer. So the whole industry is having to pivot and figure out how to better serve the interests of those viewers and make them happy instead of just making the advertisers happy.
Yeah. Interesting. So the super aggregation strategy is still very few companies that call themselves, yes, I am a super aggregator. Deutsche Telekom or Comcast would do so. But yeah, let's get to my favorite question, which is, if I were to give you $100 million, sorry, it's not a promise. If I were to give you $100 million, what would you do with it?
I love that question, and it's kind of a hard one because even like $100 million doesn't necessarily go that far these days. You know, Disney just put $1.2 billion into Epic Games.
Yeah.
But I do think that one place where that money could make a dent is in, so one of the sort of existential competitors among young people, we saw this in the presentation from Google, is YouTube. So, you know, YouTube, if you're my age, you think about it as a place where cat videos are found, or the Charlie bit my finger.
Yeah.
But for Gen Z, it's really the kind of the first place they go for entertainment of all kinds. And there are influencers on YouTube with audiences that dwarf the audiences for any conventional TV show.
Yep.
And I think that for $100 million, you could come up with some kind of methodology, you know, probably using machine learning or AI, to try to identify who are the YouTube influencers that aren't famous yet, but they have the opportunity to become really big players. Mm-hmm. And while you wouldn't necessarily want to have those people make traditional TV shows, if you are an NBC Universal or if you are a Paramount and you have relationships with these streamers at the very beginning of their career, you know, probably out of that 100 million, say you spent $1 million each on 100 of them, probably 95 to 97 of them might not ever amount to anything, but if out of that you got 3 Mr. Beasts, you've suddenly bought your way into a huge entertainment enterprise at the very beginning. It would be kind of like when Netflix tried to sell themselves to Blockbuster in the late 90s, and Blockbuster refused. You know, maybe the biggest mistake ever made. Yeah. But I think that would be an opportunity for these big traditional media companies to get involved with the fastest growing part of entertainment and change the format of what their entertainment looks like before it's done to them by somebody else.
Interesting. We're running out of time. John, thank you for
Thank you
having
so much.
been here.
Pleasure.
Great to see you in Oslo, and please enjoy the rest of the day.
Sounds good.
And see you tonight at the fantastic dinner.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.